our friend VK Sharma to share his wisdom with us. And then after that is Doug. Is there any other panelist left? I think Doug is the only one after VK. We heard from everybody else, VK Sharma, and then Doug.
Yes, please. I'm ready.
There he is. Okay, we can.
I want to clarify. Can I share the screen here?
Yes, yes, you can share screen. Yes. Try doing it. If there's a problem, let me know.
The message is host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Yeah, you are permitted to share your screen. Try it.
No, the message is coming. Host disabled.
Give me a second. I'll make you a co-host, and you will be able to share your screen. Make co-host. Yes, try now again, please. You are a co-host.
Yes, please.
Got it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. No rush. Take your time. VK is my classmate in India. We went to engineering school together, and now leading comfortably retired life.
It is not coming fully.
It's not coming. I don't know why. You should be able to share your screen. I don't see your screen. You click on the screen you want to share and then OK.
Can you see now?
If no, I cannot share your screen. I can share only my screens.
Yeah. Now it has come.
VK Sharma has. Okay, there it is. Now
do you see the screen?
Now we can see your screen.
Right. So good day to all, even though it is night in India. Thanks, Shiv. I'm glad to have the opportunity of sharing your initiative once again. I started out as a mechanical engineer, though bulk of my career was devoted to HRD. During these years, I had the opportunity of leading 2 corporate social responsibility initiatives in India, adult literacy and prevention of HIV/AIDS. After retirement, 4 of my books have been published. Coming to the presentation. So this is the theme on which I'll be speaking, why personal and good, common good eludes us. These pictures are interfering with the screen on the right. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You can hear.
Yeah, these pictures are covering part of the screen.
Oh, your picture. Okay.
But we can see your slide very clearly. We can see your slide without any problem.
How about it now?
Yeah.
Some of the part of the slide is covered by these pictures. Yours and mine.
You can, VK, you can move that by just holding down hold your mouse down on the pictures and just move the pictures over. They will move. It's on your end.
Okay.
You got it?
Yeah.
Totally good.
Okay. The submission is that we do not really know what is good for us, even though each group believes that they do. This is my basic submission. How people develop different concepts of good, let's have a look at that. Early school exposure. These are some of the streams of schools in India. DAV, schools are run by a Hindu reform movement, government schools by the Christians, madrasas by the Muslims, and government schools. It's my personal observation that the children coming out of these school streams, within the stream, they have developed a common worldview, but it's very different from the others, sometimes bordering on bigotry, which in simple terms to me means unreasonable attachment to a belief or an opinion. So this is, to my mind, an important area. Stereotyping. When we arrive in this world, no operating manual comes with us. So we have to study an individual, assess him, but it's not an easy job. To make our job easier, we start slotting them in groups, maybe on the geographical basis. He's a South Indian, he's a hillbilly. Religion basis, he's a Hindu, he's a Muslim, he's a Christian, he's a Jew. Or maybe on the physical basis, he has blue eyes, he's a shorty, etc. But each slot where you put somebody carries a predetermined bias along with it. In my training groups, I have succeeded in demonstrating within a few minutes that the human judgment can be molded in a certain direction. We all believe that our human judgment is based on solid foundation, but it is not so. We quickly tend to accept some bias, develop some bias. Obviously, tribe or family religion will have an impact on my concept of good. Leader's personality. Hitler imposed his concept of good on the whole nation. The line which is covered by this one is the modernization project. Sudhir Kakkar is a well-known psychoanalyst in India, and he has this to say on the modernization process. Progress often turns out to be glaring inequality in society. Pursuit of self-interest degrades comes down to unbridled greed. 2008 financial worldwide recession. I'm thinking most of us have gone through and remember this. I'm reading a quote from Dov Sidman, who has written a book with the title of How. And his focus is, we must first think how before we think how much. So this he has to say about this 2000 recession. Everybody assumed that housing market will only go up. This encouraged everybody to focus on the short term as opposed to long-term sustainable value, including integrity and truth. So here is a suggested definition of good. I suggest that we have a look at the suggested definition. What is good? What is true? Morally right. Now, morally right to me means something like this. Word profit means it is good to make profit in business, whereas profiteering may be legally valid, but it is not morally right. Good has to be advantageous to both the individual and the society, not harmful. There is an interesting, long-standing example on this. 1927, US Supreme Court upheld a law prescribing for compulsory sterilization of feeble-minded people. State of Virginia carried on until 1970. Germany sterilized around 400,000 of which 70,000 were gassed to death to make room in the hospital for the wounded soldiers. India sterilized 6 million people in the 70s. There was a massive resentment leading even to the fall of the government. So the crux here is that what may be good for the society at large, it has to be good for the individual also, and a balance is needed. And the good has to be appropriate for a particular clear purpose, for the peace, for unity, sustainable environment, poverty elimination, better standard of living for all, better health for all, etc. Merely being obedient to rules is not good enough, because the rules only tell us what we can do or what we cannot do. But the rules do not tell us what we should be doing and what we should not be doing, which again relates to the concept of good. Wars have been fought over the centuries for bigger territory. Land was a wealth, only source of wealth at one time. Control of scarce resources, lithium water may become causes for wars in future. Avenge humiliation. Germany after First World War felt humiliated because of terms of settlement. To impose your religion on others. Crusades is an example. The last line is, feel threatened by the design of others, so offense is the best defense. Now, my purpose of this slide is that, to my mind, wars killing millions of people ultimately is a decision of one person. So the mindset of that person, what he thinks is good, is very crucial. So the mindset of individuals are important. The way out, way forward, the long term, young minds are more enabled to be molded in a desired direction. I have already mentioned that in the various school streams, the children come molded in a certain direction. In families, I have personally observed young brigade exerting their influence, pressurizing elders to give up smoking based on what they have been taught in their school. Wholesome education in schools, to my mind, is important the world over. Now, this is a big challenge world over. How each country will accept a common syllabus for the various schools. And one of the panelists talked about the global consensus. So we need a global consensus on the right type of education in the schools. Very difficult task, but a beginning has to be made. And the suggestion here is CMP. When political parties make coalitions, they work on a common minimum program. So some CMP in UNO. I mean, the UNO is the only organization available with the worldwide reach. We may have different opinions about its effectiveness, but that's the only one. There's no alternative. So we need somebody to influence and help us in this direction to build a global consensus on education, maybe to start with CMP. And one example that comes to my mind about CMP could be common history of Homo sapiens 3,000 years onwards. But we need some help here. The name that comes to my mind is Ban Ki-moon. He was the 8th Secretary General of UN, and later he is appointed as one of the group of elders by Nelson Mandela to work for the welfare of the world. So it seems to me that he should be amenable to help us in this direction. The last slide is at least one generation. This cannot be a quick fix. It's, to my mind, a very important area. It has to be one generation, maybe 15, 20 years span. And with the aim of maybe at least one CMP per 2 years. In the short term, cinema, to my mind, is a very powerful medium. We have all seen how Hollywood films have spread the concept of Western way of life the world over. Personally, I had a negative impact. I started smoking after watching in Indian films all heroes and villains smoking and enjoying themselves. I thought it must be somebody good. So it has a potential to help us in our purpose of spreading the concept of good. Young generation today, I understand, is very much used to the Netflix. Apart from the widescreen, they show short movies. Can we do something to provide some inputs there, entertainment and a message in our area? The purpose of this brief case study, which I will describe, is that experience has shown number of times that when we treat people with respect, when we empower them, they develop responsible mindset, they develop responsible behavior. So to come to this case study, this Durham plant of General Electric makes aero engines. It employs 200 technicians who work in teams of less than 20. The only command that the manager gives them, the date on which a particular engine has to be shipped, the date of shipment. The rest, everything they organize themselves, they manage themselves. There is no cleaning crew, but the place is spotless clean. There are no clocks. There are no tool lockers. So trust, respect, and empowerment generates responsible mindset, responsible behavior. I will read out this quote. The quote is from the Fortune magazine about Dov Sidman, whose name I mentioned, is having written a book called How. So the quote from the Fortune magazine says this: a trained moral philosopher, Dov Sidman, has built a highly successful business on the theory that in today's wild and transparent global economy, companies that outbehave their competitors ethically will also tend to outperform them financially. Mark the words, outbehave their competitors ethically. Again, the whole book, How, is in line with our objective of spreading the concept of good. I have attended one of his lectures, very impressive, and he says he has made a successful business in promoting business houses to operate ethically. He has also addressed United Nations. I saw one of the videos. So it may be worthwhile trying to build collaboration with these two gentlemen, Ban Ki-moon and Dov Sidman. Thank you.
Thank you, VK. Can you unshare your screen, please? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for your words of wisdom. Please stay as one other person to speak. And that person is Doug. Let me bring Doug to the screen here.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'll just get started.
All right, but I cannot see you.
Oh,
See
my
name.
my visage is probably not as important as my voice.
Oh,
How about if I just get started? Would that be all right?
all right, just give me 1 second. John West, Jeep, Raleigh, Jet, Ave. Where is Doug gone? Oh, there it is. There it is. There he is. Spotlight for everyone.
Okay, great. I'll get started. Thank you, Shiv. I
Yeah.
really appreciate being here. To me, it's like I'm in an 18th century salon during the Enlightenment, listening to all these different approaches to a similar problem. It's great. Learning lots. Some of the things that I really like. Hope you don't mind. I'm going to start with that. Introduction. I spent nearly 40 years as an educator, as a teacher, principal, university lecturer. I'm also a father and grandfather. So this topic deeply interests me. It's connection to the future, right? I like the idea of breaking the cycle individually. The idea of probably one of the best solutions is for people to look within, to go on a spiritual journey. Makes a lot of sense. And Dr. Javasu's Soma yoga, calmness and breathing, absolutely. I love the idea that we're constructed of stories. We certainly are. And my understanding of psychotherapy is we learn to find out what those stories are and we make adjustments so that we have a chance to really focus on the essential parts of what make us tick and what makes us happy. So that makes sense too. And I agree, I've heard it a couple of times, what we talk about expands. So if you just look at the stuff you don't want, you always get far too much of that. That just keeps coming. So being careful what you focus on, talk about the stuff that you want to expand. To me, that's come through. I love the idea of Indigenous people, 7 generations. I was going to mention that in my presentation too, that to make a decision, you consider 7 generations. I suspect we wouldn't even be close to the mess we're in right now if that had been in the case. I'm also very happy to be retired. Being on a spiritual journey takes a lot of time, energy, and organization. No way my kids who have kids and busy jobs would be able to dedicate the time for it. So I'm feeling quite privileged. Organized institutional religion is really about its own survival and not supporting spirit. Well, that's been going on for millennia. I'm sorry, Father, but you're part of this, so I'm guessing you would agree too. Science, yes, answers a lot. It's a wonderful tool. My daughter's a professional scientist, a medical writer, Dr. Dunford, but at its base, it's still a tool and it can be used for harm. So it needs to be monitored. Focus on responsibilities, not individual rights. A truer statement is not being said. And what are appropriate profits for business? That's a really big question. A lot of businesses are starting to grapple with that. If it's just profit for the quarter and do anything to make that happen, and seeing the human potential and nature is just endless stuff not to pay for and to be used, don't agree. Education, I have some ideas about that. I thought the last speaker really proved Aristotle's viewpoint that education is a mirror of the political reality of a society. So that's probably a pretty good description of why Indian education, some of the things you're noticing, we have our own issues within North American education. I'll have a brief thing to say about this. So thank you. Those are some of my learnings. I'm just going to buzz on. I work with thousands of people, children and adults. Public education, here's some of the things I've learned about being as an educator. Focus on this product, this particular area. Public education, like public medicine, is sensitive to what could be considered external interest groups, no matter how well intentioned. Spiritual learning, unfortunately, is generally considered to be one of those areas, an external interest group. For example, in North America, there's presently significant explicit resistance, hard to believe, I know, to yoga and meditation in the classroom. These disciplines are considered by many to be both religious interventions as well as to be considered cultural appropriation. So that's one of the things you'll need to work at. Doesn't mean you can't do it. However, effective neuroscience and Dr. Javas made many connections to Soma and neuroscience to assist with learning whether to improve your focus or thinking and executive function would be accepted. In fact, in some cases, it already has. If you look at the Mind Up program, it's basically good neuroscience, and when you read it, to be quite frank, it's good yoga and good meditation practices as well. So I'm encouraging your advocacy, but I'm also maybe presenting some of the things you need to overcome. Appropriate humor. One of the things I learned dealing with lots of people in tricky situation creates a comfortable distance from the urgency of emotional issues. I've almost always found the toughest things need the lightest touch. People without humor, in my experience, have difficulty facing truths and accepting themselves. Lots of those strutting their stuff on the media and in social media. No humor. With this in mind, 3 people were eating their lunch on a bridge. One had a tomato, lettuce, and cheese sandwich. He was delighted that his mother knew what he wanted. One of the others had a peanut butter and jam sandwich. She said nice things about her partner's thoughtful choice. The third opened their lunch and, seeing that they had tuna, shook their fist at the uncaring heavens, yelled and screamed about how horrible it was to have tuna again, and then suddenly jumped off the bridge. The first 2 looked at each other and said, "I don't get it. They make their own lunch." Don't forget, lunchrooms are big in schools. We are often responsible for our own unhappiness. That's what the point of the anecdote was. We often hold on unreflectively to an entrenched self-image, even though this image damages ourselves and others. In some ways, these self-habits are like spreading gossip, just a bad habit. You see it all the time, social media. Breaking habits needs willingness, awareness, good technique, and resilience, something that this group has to offer, particularly Dr. Javaso's Soma Yoga. Okay, with this in mind, please answer this question. How many teachers, doctors, parents, social workers, community groups you can add to the list does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the light bulb has to want to change. Without acceptance, a clear purpose, and support, interventions, no matter how well-intentioned, will usually only generate resistance and anger. I'm sure you've seen that in many places, not just the educational system. So am I being, Shiv, am I about the right tone? Is loud or soft?
Great.
Is it good? Okay, thanks. From my experience, the spiritual journey we're hoping for people to navigate is not easy. It will require support and access to long-term, rich, well-researched methods and well-informed coaches. Some people have a natural facility for spiritual journeying. I suspect those in attendance for this conference are in this group. I think spiritual journeying is like learning to read. Some find their way on their own, actually a very small percentage. Whole language was wrong. But most people need guided support. So, as a suggestion to meet this need, perhaps a downloadable app with rich, effective resources could be developed. Might not be that hard to do. And if you want to access some of the resources, I have a wonderful relationship with ChatGPT-3. Don't be afraid to use it. I asked all the questions that Shiv had proposed for the panel. I have a rather lengthy tome that GPT-3 produced. If you're interested in getting a copy, I've left my email in the chat room. If you send me an email, I'll send you a copy of what ChatGPT-3 had to say about the questions that Shiv asked for this panel. Months of potential research in minutes by asking the right questions. And I like that idea of asking the right questions. In a similar fashion, I also asked ChatGPT-3 regarding what common curriculum among the major ancient mysteries, and I included the Vedas, shamanism, Pantajali, the Sufis, Hermetic alchemy, Christian mystics, Jacob Boehm, for example, Qigong, and many more, combined with contemporary psychoanalysis and Maslow. What do all these things say about personal transformation? And to be quite frank, yeah, they're ancient mysteries, but they're still within context. Sorry, need to look at those too, not just the contemporary stuff. That's my opinion. And what did they come up with? Here are a few of the big categories: meditation, continuous learning, self-care, appropriate support and guidance, and no surprise, were some of the many common elements of personal transformation that emerged, both past and present. So by cleaning up and growing up, hopefully we can create the thinking space necessarily for personal transformation and positive views of being alive so we can help each other and not just be desperately searching for our own survival. And like I said, if you want a copy, please send me an email. Please also consider the other obstacles that many political, religious, and economic institutions would present to any group who is interested in liberating individual humans, as this conference is suggesting. I disagree about connecting with the United Nations. Far too many of their members would not be supportive of the goals of this conference. Just think of the status of Falun Gong in China, which is really, when you get to the essence of it, it's not unlike Kundalini Yoga or Japanese Zen. In China, it is illegal. Its practitioners are subject to severe criminal penalties. You'll find, I think, that many authoritarian regimes, quite a few religious orientations, certainly corporations are getting better. I like that example of the factory that was just given. But many of them, they don't want individuals thinking for themselves, which is what I'm getting is the focus of this group. And they would block it. So with Web3 coming up and the idea of being able to connect more peer-to-peer, and I know Dr. Javasu is very interested in technology, maybe an app might be a way to go. Here's some learnings from my professional life. I'm an only child who grew up in a then isolated 1840s vintage farmhouse set in a marvelous natural setting. The house is full of books. Elon Musk has said he was raised by books. I was too. I have learned that a key source of happiness and contentment. So I don't know, like we could go on about what is the good. I get it. There's some fairly clear things. And I think being a well-educated, thoughtful person who's involved with continuous learning, I can't see any society really being against that, past or present, unless they have restrictions on your thinking. I think that contentment could be summarized by Aristotle's term eudaimonism, or the belief that a life guided through the right use of reason and thought flourishes. It creates a sense of balance, constancy, and fulfillment. All right. My parents were not only keen for me to be a reader, my grade 1 teacher told them I was creative. I think she didn't know what else to say about me. I was kind of a wiggly character. I still am, as you can hear. That was short form, I know now, after my long-term educational career, for, oh my God, I don't know what to do with them. So my parents enrolled me in art classes from an early age. They helped me develop a facility. These classes helped me develop a facility for cultivating flow, becoming comfortable with my internal imagery, including dreams, both sleeping and waking. And there's nothing like creative expression to deepen your connection to your inner world. Think of Dr. Javasu's marvelous personal space meditation this morning. Imagine reinforcing and sharing your experience in a drawing. Words are great, but just a start. And we all know the earliest artifacts of what it means to be a human go back 20, 30,000 years, and they're visual. So I would think that part of the quest, and they transcend as a rule, language. So I would think that part of this quest that you're on is to encourage different ways of communication, visual communication being one. And we have a number of engineers represented. I'm pretty sure your ability to draw and communicate visually, and medicine too, very much part of your professional milieu. At age 13, I suffered a severe broken leg. I learned yoga from books as a means of recuperation and pursued yoga all through my high school experience. I approached it competitively, self-competitively. By grade 13, I could stand on my head in the middle of the room for 30 minutes. Its effect on my emotional resilience and focus on my academic achievement were amazing. As Dr. Javasu has mentioned, our body is the best source of drugs. I realize now I was stoned on yoga for most of my high school experience, truly, and was not tempted at all by the emerging drug culture of the time. Later in life, I studied Yoshinkan Aikido, achieving a black belt, the principles of flow and action, stress reduction, overcoming fears, and confidence to pursue the challenge of an internal spiritual journey. And if you're on a spiritual journey, it's tough. You need to be in good shape. You have to deal with your fears because, from my experience, And the little I've experienced with a spiritual journey, it's not for the faint of heart. So somehow, if you're encouraging that in others, there's this encouragement to deal with their own fears and be healthy. Many of the Aikido leaders were doctors or Buddhist priests, interestingly. By the way, depending on the already crowded educational system, will probably be a dead end. I suspect to do all this stuff. I suspect Dr. Javasu could share his experiences of trying to get the medical establishment to incorporate alternative medical strategies. His development of Soma Yoga, which is technically outside the medical community, is a wonderful solution. I suspect whatever comes out of these meetings would have to be outside institutional structures too. My mother was an active member of the Dutch resistance who fought the Nazis in World War II. My father was a World War II Army officer. Both my mother and father had severe undiagnosed issues, which we now consider PTSD. And the term PTSD came out of the war in Vietnam. Learning to navigate my parents' psychological damage made me aware that many of the reasons for the challenges of the human condition are often hidden, and they can be transferred from generation to generation, almost like a dangerous inheritable virus. The formal recent epigenetic term for this is intergenerational trauma. Most of the world is under its thrall. The disruptions of the last 100+ years include 2 recent world wars, revolutions, and millions of families and generations affected, making much of the world really in a state of being the walking wounded. Shiv's comments earlier this morning about how the insensitive partition of India after the Second World War and how it inspired him to create educational opportunities such as this conference is a case in point. A guided internal spiritual transformation is known to work as a cure. This is a search for meaning, a way to reposition how we look at things. Viktor Frankl's book, if you haven't read it, I recommend it. He was an Austrian psychoanalyst who had to suffer through and survive Auschwitz. His bottom line is the only thing you can do when you're faced with something that's really completely overwhelming is change your own attitude. With my mother, I also witnessed the resilience of hate. I was told by mother if I brought a girlfriend of German descent home, I would be told to leave my home. It really was only a decade or so before her death at 78 that she'd worked out all that hate from her system. It took her almost 40 years after the end of the war. My mother was a sincere Quaker. Think of how many other people there are in the world that have a similar story to my mother and are working through similar feelings. Unfortunately, millions. I live in my childhood home. Most of the trees were planted by my father roughly when I was born. Now close to their 70s, the trees continue to be my brothers and sisters. The research is in. Numerous studies found that people living in high rises suffer from greater mental health problems and higher fear of crime. Being connected to nature is a key to human well-being, and I'm pretty sure that one's universal too, and rather hard to argue with. Access to nature is increasingly challenged. Humans emerged out of nature. We're born not into the world, we're born out of the world. That's something I've learned from working with an indigenous shaman, absolutely dead on. So climate change has another mental health effect beyond state destabilization. Finally, a spiritual journey within will take a person out of the urgency of time. Kahneman, I'm going to mention him again. This is the third time in the group. Thinking Fast and Slow, the primer for the primer in a Nobel Prize-winning book on behavioral economics, points to humanity's temporal cognitive bias. Most of our cognitive energy and space is dedicated to navigating the present, thinking fast. We need to survive. We need this to survive. This is one of the reasons why AI is having so much trouble developing, usable objects with AI in the house, because we do all these things effortlessly, like navigating the present. If you read stuff on Microsoft using Minecraft as a tool to try and figure out how to simulate some of our ability as humans to navigate the present, quite fascinating actually. So you can see that's why Dr. Javasu's Soma is so intelligent. It's about the body. Our cognitive resources are here and now, dedicated to supporting the body. we really don't care that much about a crisis in the future, no matter what we say. It's thinking slow. It's the using analysis. With an interior personal journey, I suspect, our connection to the future will not be so tenuous. In other words, we will have ways and means and a desire to grapple with and plan for some of the wicked things coming our way, and more space to connect with each other to help make this happen. Thanks so much.